So welcome everyone to our first alumni speaker of the 2021-2022 academic year. We have MBA alumni Felix Zuniga here with us, who just recently received his doctorate. So I am going to turn it over to Felix, Dr. Felix, and let him take over from here.
Great. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Molly, for having me. I appreciate being here. And I didn't know I was actually the first in the speaker series here. But thanks for having me, and I'm excited to be here. Let's just kind of jump into it, right? So nice to see you all. Nice to see some familiar names and faces. Hi, Maria. Hi, Chris. Nice to see you all. I'm going to kind of just jump into my CSUSB journey. I'm a three-time alum from CSU San Bernardino. I started college at San Bernardino way back in 1995. I got my first degree in 2001 from the Jack H. Brown College. Then it was just the College of Business, right, before the Jack H. Brown College. And my degree, I got a dual degree in accounting and information technology, information management. The reason I have a dual degree is not because I'm super smart or anything like that. It's because I have chosen a path of accounting, and I was, recruiting and doing the work for an accounting job and interviewing with firms and doing all the things you need to do to get a career. And I started doing internships, and I kind of found that, man, all of my friends that were doing the accounting work and living in this kind of career disappeared, from January through April because of tax season. And then they were doing like audit season. And it was like, do I want to do this kind of job for the rest of my life, right? And that was kind of like the question I was asking myself as I was moving into my fourth year of school. And I really started questioning, my career path. Meanwhile, I started asking myself, well, what is it that I would do if I changed anything? And it was IT, right? So back in 2000, like we had this crazy boom with IT, and it was blowing up. And I said, well, I love those classes. I can see myself doing that kind of job every day. So I decided to change my major, and I changed my major to, information management. And, at that time, there was only a BS in information management available. So I started doing the work to get that degree. And as I was getting close to finishing and looking at my grad check and all that stuff, I saw I only needed 2 more classes to finish with a double bachelor's in accounting and information technology. So I was like, well, I don't want to let all that work I had done go to waste. So I'm going to do those 2 classes, right? And they were the toughest classes, right? I remember corporate tax and I think intermediate accounting. And for anybody who's an accounting major, that those are tough classes, right? So I got through, I finished both of my degrees, and I was lucky to start working at the university. And the reason I say lucky is because I basically, since I was doing my recruitment work in accounting, I knew that I had to create a network and I had to make connections and I had to do internships and get some experience because, no one really hires somebody, straight out of college, into these kind of career jobs that you're looking for without having some experience or work. And so then I went to one of my professors and said, hey, in accounting, I was looking for experience and doing internships. I need to do the same type of thing for my IT career. And so he picks up the phone and calls somebody across campus and says, his name is Jim Mullinger. Jim, I have a student that needs some experience in IT. I think you should hire him. And Jim says, send him over. So I walk across campus. Jim gives me like a 5 or 10 minute interview and says, you're hired. Can you start, in 2 weeks? And it's like, okay, great. So I had to quit my job at Bank of America and start getting ready to like kind of throw myself into this IT world. And at that time I was like at this crossroads of, do I stay with Bank of America because I was getting promoted to like a lead teller position, and do I start doing work as a student assistant right at that time, but it's going to give me some IT experience? And you kind of come to these little crossroads, right, sometimes where you have to make these decisions. And so I jumped in, did the IT work, and I remember as I was about to start, I got a call from Jim saying, hey, we had a tech who traveled back home to his home country and he's stuck. He has some visa problems. Do you think you can take on his job full time? And I said, well, with your support, I definitely will. And so I got hired on as an information technology consultant as a student. I hadn't finished my degree and I started working at the university. And I was able to do that job for the whole summer and a few months into the fall quarter, while the person who was stuck in Thailand was able to come back, right? And when he came back, then I went back to kind of being a student assistant. But the career experience that I gained in that short period of time was enough to help me understand more in my classes, understand what was going on with the division I was working in, helped me solidify the fact that I wanted to work in the IT world. And so I finished off my senior year working as a student assistant and doing different kinds of leadership things on the campus. I was a part of clubs like County Association, Beta Alpha Psi, Latino Business Student Association, ALFs, different things that are still there at CSUSB. And so as I was wrapping that up, and starting to look, okay, what am I going to do for my career? I was working with the accounting department at the university, and the director at the time saw that I had a degree in accounting and a degree in information management. And so she offered me a job basically right out of college to kind of come in and take care of the budget for the department and to be like the first responder for tech support for the accounting department at the university. And so, it was amazing. It was my first full-time job. I was able to get benefits and pay. And I remember like needing to go see a dentist at that time. And so it was just awesome, right? And then I love being on campus. It's a place that I had grown to love and be a part of the CSUSB family. And, you can never separate me from education, So as soon as I started working in university, I heard about this thing called the fee waiver and classes that were helped, paid for. And so I started just taking any class I can think of. After a while, they said, hey, you got to stop taking classes and have like a degree objective, right? So then I said, okay, well, maybe it's time to do my MBA. So I hunkered down and, did the tests that were necessary, the GMAT and that kind of stuff to get ready to go into the MBA program. I got in 2004 and I did my MBA in IT and, because it applied to basically what I was doing on my day job. And I started working through that program, and in 2 years I was done, right? So I got my MBA in IT. In that same time, I discovered other classes that were, intriguing to me, right? Marketing and entrepreneurship. And, that was the explosion of our entrepreneurship program was around that time. And Mike Stahl had came in and really taken entrepreneurship to another level. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on over there? I want to learn about those things. So as long as I could, I was always taking classes, right? Always learning, always sharpening that saw. And meanwhile, working for the university, working my way up in IT, I became a full-time tech consultant doing everything, right? I always say I started off crawling under the desk, plugging in computers to managing servers and implementing projects. And so then from there, we had a change in leadership at the university. There was a new vice president that came in, and I saw an opportunity to join the leadership team at the university, at IT at the university. So I did, I applied, and I received a promotion and got into the position as the director of project management and assessment for the IT division at CSUSB. And it was a new role that hadn't existed at the university. And Sam Sudakar, the current vice president, wanted to implement a new project management system, a new project management office, and principles, and start teaching about project management. And he was a PMP himself, and so he saw something in me and encouraged me to apply, and he really would help develop this office and project management principles at the university. So we'll go a little bit more into the project management side of things, but jumping into that role, really exposed me to the world of IT leadership and project management and what that meant. And I did that job for about 5 years, and it was amazing. I learned a lot. I picked up my PMP certification along the way. But like I told you all, I love learning. I love education. So in the middle of all that change, I decided to get my doctorate degree. So I started my journey for the doctorate at CSUSB also. I knew the people in the educational leadership area. I saw what they were doing. It was really intriguing to me. And so I took the plunge. I talked to my wife and we said, yeah, let's do this. And so in fall of 2013, I started that program. It's the same quarter that my son was born. I think I just started, I was just about to start that new job. So I was applying. So it was like everything all at once. And, it was amazing and I wouldn't change anything, but it was tough, right? Doing all those things at the same time. And so during that program, I started the new job at CSUSB, was doing my PMP certification, which I'll go over. And then at some point too, I also applied for a different position within the CSU. And so I'm now employed at the California State University System Office. And what that is, it's amazing. I'm what's called information technology. No, not information technology. I work for the ITS, department, information technology division, and I'm a campus engagement partner. And what that does is it takes me around to all of the campuses. And I think I have a slide here for that, right? So here, I'll talk about the CSU a little bit, right? So, you're a part of the CSU. If you're at CSUSB, you're one of the 23 campuses. You're the nation's largest four-year public university. And in 2020, we became the nation's largest online university, right, overnight. We have over 486,000 students, I think about 56,000 faculty and staff, nearly 4 million living alumni. Here's some cool stats for you. Half of the BAs issued in California are from the CSU, and 1 out of 10 employees in California is a CSU graduate, right? So here you see on the map, all 23 campuses. With this job, I've been fortunate to be able to visit all 23 campuses. So the 800 miles between San Diego and Humboldt, we've been to every single campus. So I'm one of the few can say that I've been to every campus, and they're all beautiful. But there's no place like home, right? CSUSB is always where I come back to. So I'll talk about a little bit about the work I did when I was at Information Technology Services in the role as Director of Project Management. There was no way to oversee every single technical project. So I was in charge of a few of them that were, important for me to get into place because the leadership said, we need to make sure that this happens because it was either a CSU initiative or an initiative that was going to take place with multiple people across campus. I want to say at any given time, we probably had about 70 ongoing technical projects. And that was with, a staff of 115, 120 people and, several people in different leadership roles, managing those implementations plus all the day-to-day work. Some examples here were, StarRes is a system for housing, LiveSafe is an emergency communications tool, Interfolio for faculty retention and promotion and tenure. Sharewell was like a ticketing system, when you put in a help ticket for work. Reich was our project management system that, we didn't have one before. Students should be familiar with Portfolium. Actually, I was part of the Zoom implementation team when we first signed our Zoom contract. So any project that hit, the wide breadth of staff and faculty and students at the university, we always try to implement some project management principles on, and we wanted to have successful project rollouts. And so that's why we were implementing a new office of project management. I worked with a lot of skilled technical people who knew how to do their jobs, but they always had to balance doing the day-to-day job plus new work, right? And so, anybody who does work knows that you have to do what you got to do and kind of keep the lights on, but you're always looking at innovative ways to make things happen. So we're going to talk a little bit about the PMP career path, right? So once I was in that role, I knew that I wanted to become a PMP. And so if anybody on the call is interested in project management, or after you hear me talk, you want to learn more about it, understand that you have to, kind of live and die by what PMI says, right? PMI is a Project Management Institute. It's an international organization. They run off of what this thing called the PMBOK, right? And that's the Project Management Body of Knowledge. So that's the book over to the left. Every few years they update it with the new version. I want to say they're at version 7 now. And so it's meant to evolve with the industry, with the careers. And that's where you kind of learn everything that you need to know about what it is to be involved in PMI and project management and take the test. And in no way is it all encompassing for project management, but it's kind of like a guide, right? And I found this interesting quote, and I thought it was very fitting, right? Expect the best, plan for the worst, and prepare to be surprised. And if you work in any kind of project implementation, that's exactly what happens every single time. All you can do is make your best plan and hope for the best and be ready for when things go sideways, right? That happens all the time. If you're considering a PMP certification, some benefits to it is those who are working with the PMP have about a 25% higher salary than those who do not, who are working in project management. And know that there's about 1 million PMPs now worldwide, and that number keeps increasing every year. I did some just kind of number crunching, and they say like the average starting salary falls between 88,000 and 188,000, depending on what industry, what company, work from home in place. So just know that's kind of a range, right, for a certified project manager. So eligibility, right? So everybody here should be looking at option 2, right? You should have at least a bachelor's degree, if not higher, And then the real stickler, right, the real hard part is that 4,500 of project management experience. 35 contact hours means like education or education experience. So what that is going and learning about project management. So you could take those kinds of classes online, you could take a boot camp, you could take a class and knock out those 35 hours. But I would say the hardest criteria for sitting for the exam would be that 4,500 hours of project management experience. And documenting that experience is a challenge in itself, right? Because PMI is asking anybody who's going to sit and apply to fill out an application, and that application requires you to list out, a project name, what the scope of the project was, what your role in it was, and you're supposed to be the project lead in order to count these for criteria. And then you have to list out in the different kind of areas, like how much time did you spend planning, executing, reporting, so they want to know, like, you can't just say I spent 100 hours on this project. They want to know exactly where you spent that time, right? And so you have to document every single aspect of those 4,500 hours in order to even apply to sit to take the exam. So knowing that you want to take an exam is good, and that you want to get this certification is important. But like I said, documenting those hours of experience and getting that education hours is really important. You could see that if you're doing it without a college degree, you have to have 7,500 hours of experience. And so it's also within the last 8 years. So that's also a difficult task to make sure that it's completed. So keep those in mind if you're interested in the PMP. Let's see. Just so you can know, there's about 10 different project management certifications that are out there now, right? So the PMP is kind of the big one, right? There's over 1 million of us out here, launched in 1984 officially, but you'll see the new things like Agile, Scrum, new things as the profession changes get implemented all the time, right? So there's the 10 different types of project management certifications. There's even one for like portfolios. There's some for event project management. Newer ones are, like I said, Agile, and you'll see portfolio and a whole lot of things, Scrum. So these are the new terms that come up with, especially within development and IT project management. So do your research. Each one of these has different requirements, but what I was sharing was the PMP, right? That's the coveted certification. The exam, I'm going to talk a little bit about the exam. I'll jump to the last part, the last bullet. It is hard, right? I remember sitting and prepping for the CPA exam, and that was hard. But sitting and taking the PMP exam is definitely one of the hardest. And I also earned a doctorate degree, right? So this test, I remember, it's changed recently, but it was about 200 questions before, so they've narrowed it down to 180, 230 minutes to take it. I had to do it at one of those like testing centers where you go and sit with a bunch of people and take it. I think now they're allowing you to do a proctored exam from home, over Zoom kind of thing, which would have been awesome. There's no official passing score. It's all computer based, so it's based on who else is taking the test at the same time, and they do this like ranking and score, and they don't really give you numbers. They give you proficiency levels. So they break up the exam and the questions, and they tell you whether you're proficient, moderately proficient, or below proficiency in the different kind of areas. And so this was something I found for just how to prepare for the exam, right? So, look at content, enroll in any kind of study courses that are helpful. I know if you have access to like LinkedIn Learning, they have, PM certification prep, prepare a plan, get those study guides, find a partner and study, just like if you were doing like the GMAT or the GRE. Any time that you can dedicate towards studying and understanding is going to really help. Make sure you have the right version of the PMBOK, so it's the 7th version is what you need to be looking at. There's a lot of practice and sample tests and mock tests that are out there. One thing I found though, I took a lot of like free online tests, and I thought I did pretty well on those online tests. And what I found was, if it was a 4-question multiple choice, they were giving you like 1 right answer and 3 wrong answers. And when I remember taking the test, the thing that jumped out at me, or what stuck out of my head, was that all the answers were correct. And so what they were looking for was the most right answer. And so that could be very difficult if you're kind of doing a cursory, prep or study, thinking I can I can know these generally, if you know, like all the aspects are within a certain area, everything's going to look right. And so that was very difficult, right? So that's one thing that threw me off, was thinking, oh, I'm prepared for this because I'm doing good on the mock tests. So pay attention to that. Form a study group, find friends or find people who are also doing the same thing. And I remember I did a boot camp as well. And the boot camp really helped you kind of prep for the exam. And what you'd want to try to do is prep with your boot camp and then sit for the exam as soon as you can right afterwards, because it'll be fresh in your head. And, they teach you some study techniques and things that you should remember for the test. And, some of these boot camps are always kind of prepping and changing and telling you what you need to know, because it's impossible to know everything that there is regarding project management, because project management as a field can cover, manufacturing, like all the way to tech, like we said, app development or something, right? So, it's very rigid in, like construction and, like defense contracts and things like that, where they have to manage every single little aspect and every second of time and, assign the cost to something. And you can have an organization that also has very loose project management, where they talk about creating plans and sticking to a plan and doing that, right? So project management itself is a very wide area, a whole lot of knowledge out there, free on the internet, a lot of books, a lot of, videos. I'm sure there's a lot of YouTube on project management things. So there's a lot to learn, and it's impossible to learn everything. So get familiar with the test if you're going to take the test and know what it takes. So what does project management mean for everyday IT work? So in the when I was working at the university and now at the CSU, we pull in project management very loosely where I'm at now, where I was more rigid with it when in my IT director role. So what does that mean? Project charters, right? So that's before you start doing any work, you write down, what is it we're going to do? What's the goal? What is the problem we're trying to solve? Who are we doing this for? Who are the decision makers? What's the risk? Who all needs to be involved? Who needs to know what's happening? And a lot of it is common sense, but you'd be surprised at how many projects get launched or start going, and we don't have some of those questions answered. And what you find is that these are the things that cause projects to go off the rails. They're the things that will cause a project to fail, to go over budget, to go over time. And if you really sat down and planned, and you'll see right here, step 1 says conception initiation, right? So that's the charter and initiation. It's getting those things down on paper and having a meeting and talking about, okay, who's going to lead this project, right? Who's going to take this on? What resources are required? The second item there is project plans, and I don't even know how many there are. Maybe any other PMP on the call can answer this for me, but there's a plan for everything, and you can create a plan for your communications, your risk, your performance, your deliverables, and there's a template out there for any kind of plan and sub part of the project plan that you need that you can find. So just know that if there's any aspect of the work that you're doing, there's a project plan that probably exists out there with a template that you could use. Communication plans is something big that we use on a regular basis. I know my team now, we handle some big projects like we run the CSU Tech Conference, and that's a conference where we have all 23 campuses coming together to collaborate on IT subjects and knowledge and information from across the system. And we did that in person for a few years. And then in 2020, we took that virtual. So between last year and this year, we've ran 2 virtual major projects coordinating, 1,000 people in attendance, over 70 different virtual sessions, speakers and slides and Zoom meetings and, registration and payment and sponsorship. And so there's a whole lot of aspects to go along with that. And Chris O'Connell on the call and my boss, Kendra Ard, and a lot of other great people within the CSU worked on making these kinds of projects happen, but we couldn't do that without having a plan, right? You can work your way through something like that, but you have greater chances of letting something slip. And this year was our second year of doing it online. And based on the plans that we did last year, we tweaked it. We asked ourselves what worked, what didn't work. We did, what they call postmortem. After last year's events, we said, okay, what can we improve upon for next year? And so we looked at all those things this year and started early and put our plans in place. And as the event was happening, I couldn't even tell you how many hours we put in planning and prepping for a huge project like that. And, just to see it going to go through smoothly and happen, without a hitch was a testament to the planning that went into that project. And so, KPIs, everybody's heard of key performance indicators. How do you know that you did a good job with your project, or that, you scored a certain way? So, when we asked people after the event, what kind of rating do you get? Well, I think we got over a 4.2 out of 5 was our rating for the event. And people thought it was the right length of time and the right amount of time spent, learning on a regular basis. So putting in those indicators to know how you did, coming up with some plans on how to improve those things, looking at the risks that are involved, having contingency plans for, keynote speakers, and then constantly meeting and talking and debriefing. That was a big part of what we do in our everyday work. And so regardless of whether or not you have a project management certification, these are all things or tools or skills that you could use. And so what I'm saying is that any student, any MBA student can learn these things now. It's out there, right? This knowledge is out there, and you can apply it to any work, your school projects, life, home projects, anything like that. You can put project management principles into place. Here was another good quote. If everything seems to be going well, you obviously don't know what's going on. And when you work in project management, it's impossible, like I said, to know every single aspect of every single project, but you kind of just have to be able to raise flags and let the right people know that something could impact an outcome for the project. It's going to delay, the time when it's going to be delivered, or the costs associated with that, and just many aspects that you could use in your regular everyday work. I talked about some of those skill sets in project management. It's everything that I've learned, I've always been able to use, and I will be able to use no matter what career or where my career takes me. So initiating a plan, writing that plan down, getting the right people on board, setting up the ways to look at those plans that we've put in, how we execute them, and then completing the project, and then celebrating that completion. I learned a lot about resource management, the work that is needed from people to get something done. If you're asking people who have a day job to implement a special project, okay, what are you going to take away from them? How do you get more resources to make that happen for other people? How do you manage all the different projects they're working on, plus the new things that you're going to give them? So, there's a lot of people management there, but resource and time, and, how long does it take to code, XYZ project? Well, you have to look back at past things that you've done, other work that they've done, what else do they have on their plate? Time management, right? So time is one of the biggest things, time and cost, right? And budget. So, different organizations, you might have to bill out, based on the time that's being spent on a project, and you may be pre-approved for a certain amount of budget. And if you're going to, have a cost overrun, it's going to implement, your project. And anytime, you're off time or off budget, that's a reflection of project management. So all those things have to be looked at in the very, very beginning in the plan. And like I said, there's resource templates for all of that stuff out there. I would say working in project management has helped with my strategic vision. Being able to see multiple projects initiated and come to an end helps me see where they fit, how they fit together within what our organization is doing. What is this doing? Like if it was something to help student success, okay, how does this fit in the big picture of student success? And what is our role in like an IT executive implementing a new software? How is that going to help or hurt students, right? Change management is listed there, and my partner on the call, Chris O'Connell, reminded me that change management is a very important aspect of project management that might not get as I would say like emphasized, I guess, right? It's a key thing that we see as a future of project management is change management. And what change management is how do people adapt to change, and how do you manage that change in an organization? And we know anytime that there's change in an organization, there's going to be pushback, there's going to be things that need to be done in order to make that happen. So learning skills about change management is something that can be very helpful to anybody on this call. I would guarantee if you do some reading on change management, you'll be able to implement something from change management within your life, right? Within your career, within your life. learning about how to get buy-in, how to understand who your champions are. They have this whole philosophy out there called ADKAR that gives you a framework on how to deal with change within an organization with people. Something else, another skill set that one of my other colleagues pointed out, her name is Carol. Carol pointed out that, when you work in project management and you pick up a degree like a PMP certification, it gives you that common communication language, right? So when you start talking kind of PMP talk or jargon, you know what you're talking about right away. Whereas if you didn't have that, it would just make communications within work or organizations a little bit more difficult, right? So it's kind of setting up something so that all people can work together on speaking the same language. And just to talk about planning, Benjamin Franklin's quote here, by failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. I'm sure we all heard that somewhere in our life, but when you just start going without knowing where you're going to go, you'll eventually get there, but it might not be where you were looking to go, what you were looking to spend, what you were looking to do. It might take you a lot longer. It's important to get started, but have a plan when you do so. I'll add some PM advice, right? So I talked to Chris and Carol earlier this morning. I asked them, hey, what advice would you offer to an MBA student who's looking to maybe do a PMP, or even just get some project management experience, right? And so Carol, again, like I said, talked about the skills for project management, and the common language is the skill set of PMP, and understanding that the number of PMPs is increasing worldwide. And again, that means that you can talk to more people, but then it also means that, there's kind of greater competition for other project managers that are out there. So be aware of that. Chris talked about project management skills can be learned, but, there's some things like the change management side of things, right? That you have to pick up in the leadership classes, emotional intelligence, and, things that they don't necessarily teach on the PM side of things, is the dealing with the people sides of things. And my advice was, they can be used in all aspects of your life, right? Not just working with IT projects. You can use these to manage a doctoral program, right? I use a lot of my PMP skills to help manage and balance my classes and my writing and completing that dissertation, and setting deadlines for myself and working through all those different aspects together. So no matter where your life takes you, education-wise, career-wise, there's skills out there that can be used to help support you to get there. I'm sharing this cool slide. I'll let you take a look at it real quick while I take a drink here. It comes from this book called It's called the Decision Book. And my recommendation is, hey, start with the project of self, right? So you might not have a job where you're able to manage projects or see them to completion, but this decision book went out there and looked at a whole lot of like frameworks and theories, and it kind of mapped them all together and said, hey, if you want to learn how to understand yourself or others, or if you're thinking about doing something or you're actually doing it, it put all these different frameworks and theories into this kind of chart, right? So for example, in the top left, you'll see the Eisenhower matrix. The Eisenhower matrix is a matrix that says, am I doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing? Things that are important and urgent, or not important and not urgent. I think everybody's kind of seen that quadrant out there, maybe from like Stephen Covey or the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Well, that comes from the Eisenhower matrix. So this book does a little review of what the Eisenhower matrix is, how to use it, along with a whole lot of other tools that you can use that are kind of, some are PM based or not. You've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The project management triangle, something that's there. So, if you need a tool, it's out there. You don't have to invent something in order to start using these kinds of tools. And like I said, you can definitely apply them to your MBA cumulative project, right? If that's something that you have to do or something that you have to write. Along with the project of self, I encourage you to work on yourself, right? So, there's tons of books that put out there, but these are some that are meaningful to me. Start with why, helping you understand, why it is that we do stuff, not just the what that we do or how to do it, but why we're doing it. And a lot of things fall into place. The Startup of You by Reid Hoffman. That's the person who started LinkedIn and so many other startups in Silicon Valley. He talks about treating yourself like a startup and how to go through and manage your career that way. Strengths Finder 2.0, if you haven't seen that, there's a whole world of books and tests that you can take and feedback that you can get on finding out what your strengths are and how to develop your own strengths, right? So you take there's a test that's built into the book, and it gives you your top 5 strength areas. And it doesn't mean that you're God's gift to those strengths. It just means that you have potential to succeed if you were using those strengths in your life and in your work. There's always talk out there in kind of the career field and business about hard and soft skills, right? I really don't like the word soft skills. Hard skills would be, more technical type of skills that you would put into work. And soft skills would be more, I call them leadership skills. I call them people skills. They're the ones like communication, listening, working on teams. And so the book listed there, Emotional Intelligence 2.0, having emotional intelligence is considered like a soft skill in general, but I think that's the revolutionary new area. Chris and I always talk about these things on a regular basis, but, dealing with people is a major part of any kind of management, right? And management and leadership are hand in hand. You'll see Peter Drucker and John Wooden, 2 people that I love to read and analyze what they say and apply it, to my life and my career. And every time I've read, I've always gotten something different from them. Peter Drucker used to teach at the Claremont colleges, and he's like the father of management, right? He studied, organizations in the 1920s and 30s, right? And GM and IBM and what we call business, before it was business. He was an economist, and he studied these things, and he wrote what we should be doing about IT and management and leadership. And a lot of his stuff comes from the 50s and 60s, and it's so pertinent now. And so anytime I read anything from Drucker, it sticks with me. I love John Wooden. John Wooden is the winningest basketball coach in college basketball history. I think he won 10 championships with UCLA. But when you read John Wooden, he has a cool TED Talk out there that's made a while back, but just great knowledge about life, right? Life and leadership and management. And, his goal was to help people be good people, right? Before they were doing anything else. And if you were able to connect with people on a personal level and help them grow, they'll want to work and lead and, work with you to achieve whatever goals there are out there. So, reading is an important thing that you can do to develop yourself and your own project management skill set, because you'll use these things throughout your life. I'm kind of ending with that, right? I want to leave some time for questions, but I definitely love to hear from the group. Covered a lot.
Feel free to unmute yourself and take advantage of all the knowledge that he has. I'm sure I think he has a couple colleagues too that can probably jump in if anyone has questions. While you were speaking, I did have a question about the CAPM. If that's a good way to kind of get started as a student, or if you should wait and delay it later. So give me information on that one.
Yeah, that's like the certified assistant project manager, I think it is. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know. I mean, we have to look it up on PMI, but of course it's going to be less, requirement for experience hours. And Chris, I don't know if you remember, can you roll like your CAPM certification hours into a PMP later on, or does it have to be unique?
Don't remember.
Yeah. So the PMI has all those rules kind of laid out, and they're very detailed in how they do that. So I would definitely check that out. But I think you're right, Kristen, in a sense that it's a good way to get started, because that 4,500 hours can be very difficult for anybody to reach, especially right out of college if they're not managing projects.
Perfect, thank you. If anyone is uncomfortable unmuting too, you can ask a question in the chat, and I'm more than happy to relay that information.
Yeah, for sure. I know as a student, I didn't even know like project management existed, right? When I was going through school, I was looking at IT jobs, and it was just kind of like, you're going to be, a programmer, a coder, maybe a network analyst. And you kind of had like these defined career goals. And I don't remember any of my faculty ever talking about project management. And like I said, there's this whole world. I think you can go to like Indeed or Dice, and there's like 500 jobs locally that require project management skill sets or a PMP certification. And so with remote work now, there's tons of options for that kind of career as well.
Hey, Chris, I had something for you. This is Carol. Can you speak to how important a project sponsor is? Because, that really helps a project succeed.
You want to handle that one, Felix?
I'm open to any of us handling that, but yeah, project sponsor, right? So that's who are you doing the work for, right? Who's kind of like the executive that is in charge of whatever project that it is that you're doing, right? Because I've had projects where you didn't quite know who the project sponsor was, or there was multiple people listed, and I remember hearing one place, if you don't have a project lead assigned, then it's nobody, even if you have multiple people on there, because it's never going to get done if someone doesn't take ownership of that. And the project sponsor is critical to ensure that they help you define the goal and how you get there and what it's going to take to say that it's complete. But then there's also a lot of aspects of the project outside of the project that need to be managed by that sponsor, right? Sometimes it's working with other areas of an organization or outside entities. It might be acquiring key resources like money or other people, human resources, to get a project done. And so a lot of times those are navigated at a higher level, and you might have like a vice president that's working with another VP or a CIO working with somebody else. So identifying that key person is key. And like I said, Chris or Carol, please add anything.
Yeah, I think a good project sponsor would be a champion for the project, someone who sees the value of it and really believes in it and helps promote that vision to the folks who are going to end up being recipients of the project's outcome. And I'll give you a quick example. I was working for a branch of the Catholic Church, and we were rolling out a tool called Yammer. It was a communication tool that allowed all of our offices to talk to each other across North America. And when I showed it to our executive, one of them said his eyes lit up and he was like, this is exactly what we've always needed. And he was every day talking to all of the executives across the country, getting buy-in on this for us. So when the IT folks went back to start, doing the work to get the tool rolled out, people were receptive to it because our sponsor was such a good sort of champion and salesperson for it.
I see a question from David Perez. David talked about starting a new business and, how would he find a PM to help with that? So it might be difficult with a small business, David, right, to find a certified project manager to be able to do that. But you might be able to find somebody who is interested in getting some experience in managing a project, right? And so in this case, David, you would be, like what we just talked about, that kind of key stakeholder, right, who's the owner of it. But you yourself can act as a project manager, right? So I would definitely consult with you anytime you want, David. You know that. But you can. It's about defining, your goals and what it's going to take to get there, listing out those steps, and then making it happen, right? I mean, that's the essence of project management. Is it's not just about the work, but you have a start and an end, and all the things that you need to get there, and making a plan to do so. Right. So it's as easy as that. And I would say, don't start from scratch. Don't think that you have to figure out how to do these things on your own. There's going to be a lot of resources that are out there for free about, especially with starting your own business, right? I'm sure you can Google project management for small businesses, and you're going to find something where someone has adapted those skills or those tool sets to help a small business get started.
A lot of resources too at the university for that. We have an enormous entrepreneurship program that's launched. They just did a master's in science and entrepreneurship innovation too. And so students are doing projects for that class too. So you could potentially look at, partnering with someone that's doing an actual project for their master's degree and things like that. So there's a lot of different resources out there to help facilitate starting a business that, in project management is applicable, but maybe not necessarily the actual certification at the start of a business. Okay, so we have a couple other questions from Chris. It's with the PMP certification in hand, would it be more advisable to start a career as PMP for any industry and learn that industry over time, or rather a specific industry that goes with your current intended background?
Yeah, that's tough. I would say try to lean towards more your intended, kind of career path or background is my suggestion. But, sometimes it's not easy to get started in any specific, you might want to go into, IT project management, but you can't get hired in as an IT project manager, right? So, would you take a job as a PM in a different area? Well, yes, you're going to get project management skills, but you might not have project management skills that are related to your specific industry, right? So like if that was like a defense industry job, that's different from IT development for like a software. And so, yes, you get those skills, but you need those skill sets in the industry that you plan to work in. Some of those PM skills are kind of generalizable and can fit any industry, but others are very, very, specific to the industry that they're in, and the experience can be more valuable in your intended industry. Carol or Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
I would just add, I have a good friend who's a PMP, and he's in construction, which is like night and day. It's completely different than what we do in IT. The same principles. He deals with more costs and more projection than we do in IT. But he started in construction. It was kind of his day job, and he went he got a BA, and then he just kind of naturally went there. I don't think he's well fit for IT, so he probably wouldn't have made it, but it was his area of interest, and now he's just thriving. So I completely agree with you, Felix.
Awesome. We have a few more questions. I'm going to try and get them in order that they were typed in. So how do the roles of project manager and project owner compare to the roles of a product owner and Scrum Master and Agile?
Yeah, so product manager has to do with something specifically being produced, right? So you might be in a manufacturing organization and your output is like a computer, right? Whereas projects would be, implementing a new division of an organization could be a project. I mean, the definition of project is very loose, but I think product gets more towards like a deliverable that's a tangible product that might be for sale, right? And then the other aspect to that would be like a program manager, right? That we didn't even talk about here, but a program manager is the person that oversees many projects, right? So you have a project manager might have a portfolio, and then a program manager would have many project managers underneath them with a portfolio as well. So talking about that overall. And then getting into Scrum Master and Agile. Agile's kind of new, right, in project management, and it's a very specific tool set for development and implementation. And getting into Scrum and learning how to do that. It's a very, would you say, Chris or Carol, that like you've seen Scrum outside of IT in that sense? I see it in app development or software development, but not necessarily in other aspects of project management.
And I think it was specifically designed for software development in mind, because previously we had used this waterfall method, which is like you build out the whole plan and then you build the building. And what we found is that if you did that with software, you end up delivering a product that doesn't match what people want. So Agile kind of breaks it into very small chunks, which they call sprints, that allow for continuous evolution of the program.
Right.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm working in an Agile method, and I'm taking my first project management class, and I'm just trying to understand how to relate what I'm learning compared to what I'm experiencing at work, and that helps kind of clarify it.
I'd say that I've seen a lot of places say that they're going to use an agile methodology when it comes to software or network buildouts, but it's always been hybrid. I don't think I've ever seen a pure agile methodology used in real life before. So what you're reading, Rudy, may not exactly match what you're seeing in real life.
And remember that I want to say Agile and Scrum came from like a manifesto, if I remember right, Chris. Like, you know, it was project managers who got together and said, hey, this stuff that they've been using in the, you know, manufacturing industry doesn't quite fit what we do over here, right? So they wrote out this, you know, like I said, a manifesto of what should be done for, you know, IT and app development and software development and how this should be different. And that's kind of where it's sprung from, and it's grown into a whole industry on its own.
Awesome, thank you. So we have about 10 minutes left. I think we have one question that's probably just enough time. And so Veronica is asking, she's ready to apply for her PMP certification, but she's finding the application a little bit overwhelming, especially the logging of project hours. She's asking how long it took you to complete your application. And I would tack on any tips and tricks for, you know, managing that logging of hours.
Yeah. I feel for you, Veronica. Don't give up. It's a very tedious thing that, you know, it took several months, right? I mean, I think just looking at it alone, and it's very daunting understanding what you have to document, right, for each one of those things. What I found that was most helpful was creating, like, I think I used a Google Sheet, right? So you can use Excel or anything, you have access to Google Sheets. But, you know, I created something that was online. I didn't want to put everything into the application and have it like fail and not save the information that I spent, you know, or trying to write up a description, right? So doing everything kind of off the application in an online service that I knew was going to be there, backing it up while I was doing it, you know, creating some fields to automatically add up those hours for you so that you can always keep track of your total hours. Other tips would be, you know, start with your biggest projects that you know are going to document you the most hours and kind of knock down that 4,500 down, right? So you can see faster, you know, you can see the goal line sooner, right? Like trying to get down that 45 hours. And I basically took whatever my total hours was at the bottom and subtracted that from 45 hours. And I had a little ticker at the top, right? Like, okay, I need to document more hours, right? And anytime you're working on projects, you do that, because I think if you just sit there and try to remember how long did I spend doing all these things while, you know, for something that's already done, you're probably going to underestimate the time that you put into the work. But if you document it along the way, you're definitely going to, you know, you have proof, right? You can say, well, we spent 10 hours kind of doing just the planning for this aspect of the project, right? And so keeping those kinds of logs along the way definitely will help with those things. And, you know, sitting down and just writing out the descriptions and who the key stakeholder was and all the aspects of what the application asks for, having those so that when you go to input them, you know, you're just copying and pasting it in, and it's not like you're trying to figure it out at that time. And that was my tip. Any other tips from Chris or Carol on that application process?
One thing that I found with it is I had a lot of trouble finding enough hours to put in. And what I realized is that sometimes we're doing projects, but we don't realize that's really what they are. We're just so busy in the work that we don't actually recognize that this was a project. And so maybe looking back at some of you know, some of your past work and reflecting on it as asking, is it a project, might be helpful.
Volunteer work definitely counts, right, Chris?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, I don't want to abuse your time. So we appreciate all of your insight and your sharing. And I'm sure that you'll get many emails from our students here. If you guys need any assistance with getting in touch with Dr. Felix Zuniga, you're welcome to email me and I can definitely refer you on. I'd also like to thank Chris and Carol for joining us as well and providing that extra insight. It's always excellent to have a few more on here to give a great insight and share their experiences, because everyone is different even if you're going for the same thing. So again, thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.